so much for coming tonight, everybody. For those of you that don't live with us at Vita Student, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome. Tonight, as I'm sure you already know, we've got some really special guests for you. Our big talks are designed to inspire and teach the student community, so hopefully you'll leave tonight feeling super excited, pumped, ready to kind of go out there and achieve your dreams. Our first guest of the evening is one of the world's leading authorities on ethical hacking and cybersecurity, Jamie Woodruff. Jamie entered the public eye when he hacked Facebook during his time at university, and he's since uncovered holes in a number of large profile organisations, computer operations, including Twitter, YouTube, Apple, and he is here kind of to talk to you tonight about the work he does to help keep customers' data safe. We're also joined by Jeremy White, who's the executive editor at Wired magazine. He is a true expert in the tech product market. He oversees all the coverage at Wired UK, and he's worked with some of the largest consumer brands. His expertise range from automotive, design, luxury watches, artificial intelligence, and much more, which I'm sure he'll talk to you about tonight. Finally, I'd just like to introduce you to Sophie, who will be our panel compere this evening, and she'll be taking any questions that you guys have. So, without further ado, I'll obviously leave you with the people who you came here to listen to speak. Please give a warm welcome to Jamie Woodruff.
Cheers. Okay, you can speak amongst yourselves while I set this up. I don't like silence. It's great. I've got a 13-month-old daughter, and it's awesome. I get so much done. Seriously. I think we're good to go. It's very bright, this, isn't it? So, basically, I'm just going to tell you some stories about myself, some of the stuff that I've done over the years, what it is I actually do. I was just saying earlier, I got mentioned, when people ask you, what do you do, what do you say? Well, I normally tell them I'm a painter and decorator. It's much more easier to explain, than an ethical hacker. So it's just kind of a presentation with some of the pictures and some of the stuff that I've been kind of involved in over the years. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my stories. So to start it off with, I'm autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic. I struggle to read and write, but I can pick up languages very well, both programming languages and speaking languages. I started properly hacking when I was 9 years old. So I used to, the funny stories I can tell you, my father brought a PC home to our house, and I took it apart when he left me to babysit when I was 9 years old with my brother. And I started putting everything back inside. Next thing you know, it was only a day old, it started beeping to me. So I'm like, okay, well, this is not very good, because when he gets home, he's going to see that there's something wrong. And then he took it back to the store, and the individuals in the store said it was our fault. We forgot to put the fan on properly, and that overheated the CPU. So I was like, okay, thanks. It wasn't my fault, but it was. And then it went home, and the exact same thing again. I took it apart, and then it went back to the store, and each time I'd watch them, and they'd teach me new things about the components inside the machine. And after a while, I kind of understood all the components, but there was this interface, this graphical interface that I hadn't really dabbled in. I was more kind of, concerned with the components. So I started learning different things, and when I was 11 years old, I did some work with Symantec, Norton antivirus as a prime example. So I used to write my own malware to kind of circumvent security on Windows. And back then it was Windows XP, they're great. I used to just listen to the sounds continuously. I loved them. And then from there, it kind of became more interesting to look at the internet side. So again, we was on AOL at the time, on dial-up, when I first started dabbling. And when I was growing up, it was quite difficult because my mother and father would never ground me because I never left the house. So their form of punishment for me was to take my internet. That's the worst thing that you could have done to me until I learned to crack Wi-Fi, and I was pretty much unpunishable then. And what I used to do is my first kind of entrepreneurial journey in cybersecurity was on the Friday I disabled my neighbour's Wi-Fi, a guy called Jeff Stinson. You can redact that afterwards. And I used to charge him £10 to fix it again every week. So I used to make my own pocket money by doing that. So after the whole kind of, the GUI side, going on to more the internet side, I started to learn to hack MySQL databases, web applications, and used to just play around and not really understand what I was doing. I could find these exploits. I kind of understood how they worked at the time, but I didn't understand the damage or the implications that I was doing to companies around the world. To me, it was just fun, and I really enjoyed it, until Scotland Yard knocked on my mum's door. And my mother at the time, I was at college at this time, and my mother at the time rang me up and she said, there's a policeman here to see you. I was like, okay. So next thing you know, 2 police officers came in my college. So they stood in the doorway looking in the classroom and they said, is Jamie Woodruff here? So everyone's looking around and I'm like, you better not say it's me. So I'm like, I'm just going to the toilet. So I stood up, I said, what's he done? And he said, well, we're waiting for Jamie Woodruff. We can't speak to you. I said, well, I'm Jamie Woodruff. They said, well, did you know that you've been looking at witness statements and reports online, and because you told us about it, we're not going to prosecute you, but just be very careful with when you're rummaging around online. So I kind of learnt my lesson that day, but I still continued. Then at school, so at high school, I'd always found it very difficult to fit in. I mean, people, they lie or they have an agenda. That's what people are like. To technology, for me, if I say what's 2 + 2 to the computer, it will say 4. If it says 16, it's my fault. I've made it do that, I hope. But if I say to you, you say, why? You don't really give me that answer that I want straight away. So I'd always related to technology. And then from high school, I got expelled. So after 3 years at high school, which is ironic because there's a plaque outside saying most influential former student, Jamie Woodruff, but they expelled me from high school. And then from there, I went to college, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try again. I'm going to do everything that I wanted to kind of do, and I'm going to put my head down and just do what's asked, that's all. I'm not going to play about. 6 months in, I got expelled yet again from college. And then I started working with people with mental health and learning difficulties and kind of fell into that area. So it was great because I used to work with my mother at the time. So me and my mother would look after 15 residents with learning difficulties. They go to sleep at like 11 p.m. and from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. it's just laptop time, getting paid. I can just do what I want and sit up all night, which is what I enjoyed. And then one day I said to my mum, I said, I want to go to university. And she just laughed and said, okay, And at the time, I didn't come from like a wealthy family. My mother and father had separated. My mum sold everything in the house except bed for her and my brother to get me to university. So I built this robot that applied to all the universities in the UK. It just automatically went down Wikipedia, checked the admissions page, and just submitted my resume pretty much overnight. 4 universities got back to me. Oxford said I wasn't financially viable, but then offered me a master's paid scholarship 2 years later, which I thought was ironic. And one university, Bangor University, got back to me as being prominent. So Dr. Stephen Merriott said, okay, come for an interview in a few days' time, and we'll see, what you like. So I went for my interview, and I was on stage, in his office counting in binary and stuff on his whiteboard and going through all his questions, talking about while loops and for loops and everything else that he asked me at the time. And then he says, you start in 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, I haven't prepared for this. And then all of a sudden I went to university, and it changed my life. 3 to 6 months into university, I found it very difficult to kind of transition, The one thing about school was, if you don't attend, they ring your mum up. The one thing about college, if you don't attend, they ring your mum up. The one thing about university, if you don't attend, you're just losing money. It's your own fault, right? And I couldn't really grasp and understand that. I'd always had someone to kind of push me or prod me or put me in the right place. And then at university, after about 3 to 6 months, I was going to quit university. I'd had enough. It was really affecting my mental health. It was not good for me at that time. And basically, one of my friends said, come to a hackathon. See how you feel. Come to a hackathon. Spend the weekend just drinking Red Bull, eating pizza, and just doing awesome student things. So I said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. I went, and that weekend changed my life again. So I ended up hacking Facebook, Twitter, and Bloomberg in 6.5 minutes live on stage. I won a $250,000 scholarship to go into the US to teach cybersecurity. I sat all my security certifications with MAL 2, passed with flying colours, and then went back to Bangor University teaching as an undergraduate cybersecurity. And then that led to me talking kind of all the way around the world. But here's just some of the stuff that I've kind of been involved in. So this was like Windows Vista, man. They were the days, you know. And I had her as well at the same time, so got a big bald patch now. And then, so this is when I got to meet David Cameron at Downing Street. This was really cool. So I was helping this homeless guy at the time and teaching him technology. So each day I'd sit with him. You can see it on BBC News. I'm not going to bore you with the details. And I got him back into education and back into working by continuously, pushing and prodding him. And I got nominated to go meet David Cameron with some other individuals that were like aspiring youths because of that. And then this is me and Boris. The worst day of my life. I think he was more concerned with, he's like, can someone hack my BlackBerry? Like that, just continuously. He was so scared, he turned all his devices off and put them in NFC-proof bags. So, and this was kind of hackathons, stuff that I attended. And to me, technology has been like a very important part of my life. I've always related to technology. This is me and the Prime Minister of Spain at the time having a drink on a beach in Dubai. So that was really interesting. So I got to go to Google headquarters. I'll tell you a little story. Put your hands up if you know about ransomware. Okay, a few. For those who don't know, it's kind of a demand for payment. So your machine gets infected with malware. They essentially demand a specific payment amount, and then you get your files back. In theory, that's how it kind of works. So at this time, when the big one that WannaCry hit, so this was a very big piece of ransomware that affected millions of devices around the world, I always like text messages. I hate phone calls because people can twist things. It's very, very good to have it recorded so you can see what you've said. And at this time of getting off the flight from Google Kitchener, in Kitchener in Canada, I had about 40 missed calls on my phone. So I rang this individual. I said, what's your issue? You've rang me a million times. What's going on? He said, well, I have 1,600 petrol stations or gas stations in the UK and Europe, but none of my customers have Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, I very much doubt that they will have. He said, yeah, but all our coffee machines are demanding payment in Bitcoin. The Costa machines that you put your cup in at the service stations. So he got infected with ransomware, and it was spewing coffee and milk out, and it cost him nearly £2 million in damages. So that was another fun one. This is when I broke into a bank, being a Domino's pizza boy. Again, you can see this online. So every day, my speciality is social engineering. So I look at people, I see how they act, how they interact. What watch do you have on? What nice shoes do you have on? From the lovely Wired guy, they're really nice shoes. So I'll bet you for him later. And I used to kind of watch people all the time. That was my thing. I never really understood people, but I used to enjoy watching to see how I could learn from them. So I took up this field in cybersecurity, almost like a security con man, essentially. That's what social engineering is. You blag your way into places around the world, you get paid for it, very hefty, it's very good, and you just get to be somebody else for the day, which is something cool for me. So at the time, I found out that every Friday, this bank in London would order stacks of pizza from Domino's. The guy would turn up, he'd get a visitor badge, he'd go in the building, 15 minutes later, he'd return with no pizzas. So I followed him back and applied to be a Domino's delivery driver and got the job instantly. The following Friday, I turned up at the building, I broke into their server room, and they paid for me to break in by any means necessary without causing physical damage or distress. So I can't make people cry, I can't hit the fire alarm, I've got to follow the rules and stuff. But that was one of the methods that I used to break into a building and break the stage. This guy is very important to me. He's a guy called Jack Milner. He worked with Roy Chubby Brown, the comedian. So many years ago, I wouldn't really speak. I used to communicate with my technology, with people online, but I wouldn't have a conversation like I'm having now. I found it very difficult and hard. So he sat with me week upon week upon week and taught me how to communicate, how to interact with the audience, how to open up, how to be myself. So he's very important to me, so I put him in the slide. This is Lums University in Lahore in Pakistan. So I got invited to talk to all the faculty and be an honourable member of the university now, which is cool. So my name's on another plaque inside. But these guys are some of the world's leading minds when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a lot of really cool individuals coming out of that university. This is my stepdad. So sometimes I attend different places that are quite high risk. So like I've done Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, and that's my little bulletproof vest. He said, was it heavy? So I said, try it on. So in his little pajamas. This was a cool one, Hacker Train. So we literally lived on a train for the whole weekend. So what we do is try and break into things, find exploits on the train, find different ways to break into the train, sponsored by Virgin Trains and East Midland. And I found some really interesting vulnerabilities with our wireless while testing the trains. This was me in Moscow with another one of my friends, Alejandro. We found a bug bounty in Facebook and donated that to a charity over there as well. So that was quite cool. We did that back in 2014. This was Corey. So he's the head of the staff, the chief of staff for Google Canada. And he's like 2 years less than me. So I'm 26 and he's 24. That's insane, isn't it? The fact that he looks after all the staff for Canada, and such an awesome person as well. This is Alejandro again, and this is us just, you know, looking at the hackers movies in like 1990s, getting our green consoles down to try and look cool. And this was one of the highlights of my life. I'd always wanted to be at Google, or I always wanted to, you know, walk in the building at Google and actually legally be there, not break in. And I got to write on the wall, and that was one of the good times of my life. So. This was Dubai, so just me being really tired and jet-lagged and just talking on the radio about gobbledygook. And this is the Global Summit of Women Speakers of Parliament for UAE. So every year I get to talk at the Women's Parliament in UAE, talk about current technological trends, so I get to travel quite a lot. This is when I found my first ever Facebook bug bounty. So this is everyone just swarming around, like, oh my God, what have you done? And I had to explain it to them continuously, but it was really fun. And that was an invitation to His Excellency in UAE in Dubai, to his palace and residence. So I got to sit down with him and talk about some of the stuff that I found over the years. And I got to work with the Dubai authorities as well, which was really cool. And that's my daughter. I was teaching her how to play Xbox, so I don't think she's picked it up yet, but we'll get there. So I got to hack at the statue in Brazil. So they set up a satellite feed at the top, and we got to spend a few hours there over the weekend, so on the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday, trying to find bug bounties, which was really cool. Because I wanted this thing where I wanted to visit as many landmarks as I could, and then try and get a bug bounty in each landmark, you know, and then donate it back to the specific area that I was testing. And this is me just being silly. I don't know why I just used to walk around with this sword at hackathons, so I was known as the sword guy. And then that was me in kind of my element, you know, very interested in the technology side. I got to meet the Prince of Wales at St. James's Palace. I have really bad hair days in all these. And this one's really interesting. So this boy is also autistic, and I was giving a speech to about 1,500 people in Dubai. And one of the audience members actually employed this kid off the back of my speech. So he gave him a chance to shine working in an accountancy firm. His mother then came 6 months later to find me that I was speaking at another event, just to tell me exactly his progress and how he got the job because of my speech and stuff. And I got to spend the day with him at Legoland in Dubai, which was really good. And then that was given to me from the Kingdom of Bahrain, talking to some youth leaders. And then my startup weekend. So that's kind of a few of my pictures. So I'm going to show you some little live hacks and demonstrations now about, you know, there's some fun side to security. So speak, I don't like silence. You can laugh, but I don't like it. You can't concentrate. I don't want to put my headphones in.
Jamie, what's the bounty you were talking about?
Which one, dude?
Just explain what the bounty is.
Yeah, so when I reference bug bounties, this website's called like Bug Crowd. There's many different ones around the world, many different websites specializing in different parts of technology or financial sectors. And they encourage hackers that are white hat and ethical to essentially break in using their set perimeters. So you must follow their rules or guidelines or you're liable for prosecution. But you can win like Apple Pay a minimum of $5,000 all the way up to like $1 million, depending on what bug bounty you find. Tesla do, Wired have some really good bug bounty programs on their website that you can follow, and then you can just make money by doing it. So I used to make about $80,000 to $150,000 a year just by making bug bounties, like by finding bug bounties. And one of the notorious ones I'm famous for is the Kardashians, and that's just ruined my PR. So, okay, so I'll just show you some interesting things. I'm just going to put this down because it's really weighty. So, actually, I'll talk to you while I do this. Why not? So we have a thing called CNI, which is critical national infrastructure. Okay, airports, critical parts of security in the UK and overseas, we class that as CNI. Now, CNI is supposed to be impenetrable. It's supposed to be impenetrable. But you can find, just by using Google, so if I go to my desktop, I'm trying to type with one hand. This is my little secret document. Okay, let me sort my internet out. Speak while I do this, please. Okay, I say while we connect to my internet, I'll show you another trick. Put your hands up if you have a contactless card. Okay, put your hands up if you have a contactless MasterCard, maybe. Okay, so do you mind volunteering? You've got to trust me. Bring it to the front. Do you have one at the back as well? We've got to get paid somehow. I'm just kidding. Bring it to the front and I'll show you some little tricks. It's like Fort Knox, this place. Yes, MasterCard. Is it Monzo? Have you got another one except Monzo? Okay. Bring me the Monzo and try it anyway. Just give them me all. Just hold that a sec. Okay. So what you can do, you can get all the details for the entire card, the expiry, the 16 digits, and you can also show all previous transactions that you've done with the card. Anybody with an Android phone can do this. You do not need to kind of have any technical background. You just merely need an Android device. It's relatively easy to do. Yeah, well, you can do Visa, but you can't get the transaction history off Visa. So, yes. That's for education and research purposes only, okay? I have to say that so I don't get sued. Okay, so I'll show you one last thing, and then we'll move on to a discussion.
When you say anyone can do it, do you have to download something that anyone can download?
Yes, so you can get an app on the App Store that's free. Seriously, on both Android and Apple, the device is free. Sorry, not Apple. You can't use Apple because of the NFC capabilities. However, Android, any Android device with NFC you can use.
So if you have a wallet that blocks NFC, are you safe?
Yes, you are safe indeed. But there's lots of different things that you can do. So, for instance, with that transaction history, I can tell you where you've been, at what time, what you purchased. So let's say I'm trying to break into your company, okay, or I want to steal some research that you guys are working on. I can say, hey, you've not paid your gym membership. This is such and such from whatever gym, and then it looks realistic because I can say on this time and this date the actual payment bounced. When you click this link, and then I could essentially fish you into giving me some information. Now, no matter what you say, you use one password for pretty much everything. You can lie and say, maybe I have 4 or 5, which, all right, fair enough, but you do. So, does anyone have any questions while I try and solve this Wi-Fi issue? I had it working earlier, but now it's just not working. It's Apple, man. You want me to tell you the app? The app on the App Store is called Credit Card Stealer. Yeah, honestly, go onto the store and you can see it. Anyone can download it. I'll show you. Sorry.
They didn't take that off the Play Store.
No. It's for education and research purposes. See, that's the beautiful thing about Google. It lets you be what you want to be. So I want 2 volunteers now. Okay, so you come to the front. We'll do this other demonstration. We're okay for a few minutes. Yeah, Grace. A few minutes, okay. So I need 2 volunteers. Come stand at the front. You can be my guinea pigs. So I'm going to put this down, and then I'll talk you through what I'm doing. So just speak amongst yourselves, because we're quite close-knit, and I really hate silence. Okay. So what's your telephone number? Do you have your phone?
Yes.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Just stay there. Do you have yours?
I have it, yeah.
Okay. What's your number?
07713
Yeah.
829 630.
Okay. And your phone's in your bag?
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can turn it off if you want. What's your number? +44.
I don't remember.
Go get it. Someone else give it a number quick.
We're going to work together.
07501
+44 75
01
Yep.
676 989.
676 989.
Do I need to tell my phone up?
No, just leave it.
I found.
Okay, so you've got your phone.
Yeah.
Pull it out. Yours is turned off.
I turned it off at the start, yeah.
Good.
Just turn it back on.
Makes it more better.
I'm now scared.
Yeah, I'm terrified.
Do you have signal?
I have 1 bar, it's not much. But
I have 1 bar as well.
I have a signal.
Wait.
Oh, so that's George.
It's you.
Whoa.
Answer it. Put it on loudspeaker. Hey, it's George.
Oh my
How are you?
god.
Sit down.
That's terrifying. Yeah, he's my mate. I already had his number on my phone. Oh, it came up as his phone number. His
I
phone's
bet
up.
you did.
Which app was it?
Oh, that one's my app. That's my not for resale app.
Not educational.
Yeah, it genuinely sucks about this Wi-Fi. So,
So you just use phone number and that's it?
that's all you need is your telephone number. And the scariest, do you want to know the scariest part to it?
Yes.
So, let me pick this up, there we go. So the scariest part to it is, I can call you from your own number, and if you don't have a voicemail pin, it'll say, welcome to your voicemail. You have 6 new messages. I can teach you to do it in less than 2 minutes. So if someone owes you money, you can ring from their family and they'll pay you. Yeah, that doesn't work for me, so I'll try one last thing before I give up completely. You should never give up, but on this case, you can. I'll just throw you this. Catch. Just keep hold of that. Okay.
Just hold it like that.
That's how they do it. I feel like maybe our IT department was like that.
Well, they need to change their Hikvision CCTV password because it's default, so. I don't.
I don't even know what that means, but
Okay, well, we can't do that, but I'm sure afterwards, if you come see me, I can show you. It was working fine over there near the Xboxes.
we'll do like a little workshop.
Yeah, sure, yeah, come see me. So I think that's pretty much it. I've never really done a talk like that before. It's more been focused on security and hacking. So I hope you guys liked it and kind of had a more insight to me. So thank you.
Questions. Sophie will be taking all your questions from the audience, so please feel free to get involved, get stuck in, get everything answered, and enjoy.
Should we just go up? Sure. There we go.
Do you?
Get over here.
You can sit in the middle.
I'll sit in the middle. But you already knew where it was, didn't you?
Find now. Find my Android.
So that was mega. For somebody that doesn't know too much about the particular industry that you work in, my mind is absolutely blown. So we're going to need a hoover. There's brains everywhere in the audience. That was absolutely amazing. So obviously you gave us a bit of a background on yourself, but Jeremy, do you want to give us a little bit of a bit of background for the people?
Sure, yeah. So I'm executive editor at Wired magazine in the UK. I've been there for over 7 years now. I've been involved passionate about technology for most of my life, but I sort of fell into technology journalism after starting out reviewing games and games consoles, the usual way people get into it, just for free, because you're willing to do that for nothing. And so now, after years and years there, I was a tech editor at Esquire magazine. Then I was digital editor at a section of the Financial Times, then went on to Wired from there. So it's been a sort of like a circuitous route to where I've got to, and I sort of found my home where I should be, really, at Wired. And it's a very strange way of actually getting there, but it's taken rather a long time to get there, and it's certainly not been the standard route into journalism.
But they're all the same. So over the week, we've been getting some questions from social. We've got a few questions from some of the students in the audience, but I know some of you have also been noting down some questions throughout the first part of today. So I'm just going to start with going through some of the questions that I have now, and then I'm going to dive into the audience and start putting the microphone in front of some of you. So we're going to start with yourself, Jeremy.
Okay.
So you've worked with some amazing people, brands during time with Wired magazine. Are there any projects that were particular highlights for you?
Wired. The thing people don't realise about Wired is that people think Wired is a technology magazine. It's not a technology magazine. It's about innovation in any field. There used to be a programme on the British television called Tomorrow's World back in the 1980s, particularly, where it was just talking about, okay, where is the world going next, whether that be in biology, in molecular gastronomy, whether that be in the space race, or whether that be in consumer electronics and things like that. So it's all about where we're going next and who's pushing things forward, and that's what Wired is about. So it's very strange to talk about which bits have been the interesting bits, because the reason I've been at Wired for over 7 years is because literally everything we do is interesting, because it's about where companies are going next. So it's which companies are using the blockchain, for example, not for cryptocurrency, but for tracking tuna fish sales from Japan to the very plate you eat it off in San Francisco, or for the construction industry, or for the travel industry, or whether you're talking about the companies that can now 3D print bone, actual bone, rather than plastic that gets inserted into your body that then bone grows around, but the plastic never leaves your body. They can actually print bone now, just on its own. And so you can go from writing about that one day to writing about why can't they bloody sort out the Wi-Fi on the tube on the underground network in London.
Or here.
And or here. And all of it is particularly interesting. So we can be doing a 45-minute YouTube documentary on Shenzhen and where that's going and why that's important, to a new industrial waste recycling facility in Copenhagen, which has been designed so well that it pumps out nothing but sort of clean air and water, and they even built a dry ski slope on the top of it to make it a tourist attraction. So it's the idea of taking these things, taking our world around us and actually making it more interesting, making it innovative at its absolute core, that it's very, very difficult to think of a couple of things that are really bloody interesting, because it's all interesting.
I was actually on like a boat cruise in Copenhagen, and it was about -7 in the middle of the Baltic Ocean. They pointed it out, and I was just like, the last thing that I would have expected. Is very, very interesting. I should also say, as a disclaimer, the Wi-Fi here is actually amazing. So if the IT department does see this. Jamie.
Hello.
Was it on?
Hello. It's not working.
Oh no.
You're just killing me today. Alright, mute it. Turn on. All right, smart man.
Who knew it was just the on-off?
Just wanted to make you do your miles.
That's it.
So Jamie, of course we want to know this, and I'm sure you get asked this all of the time. So we want to know about how it came around that you hacked Facebook at university.
It was just by accident. Like, there's nothing really to say. I didn't set out to do that. It was just I had, there's so many different bug bounties that you can go after. It's just you might accidentally find something that you don't, mean to do. The Kim Kardashian stuff is a prime example. I only went on there to complain about Kanye getting an honorary PhD. That was the sole reason why I was on Kim's website. It wasn't to find an SQL vulnerability that led to nearly 50 million teenage, kids' accounts that could be compromised. It was just me wanting to give some form of nice criticism, essentially on there. So that's how it kind of came about. And a lot of hacks are crimes of opportunity. Back in the early days, we were kind of digital graffiti artists. That's all we wanted to do. We didn't care about the data. We didn't care about making money from it. It was the fact that in one night you could hack 150,000 web servers instantly if you found one exploit that you could reproduce and then essentially deploy that to take ownership. So it was about spraying our patches on the internet and then waiting for another hacking group or collective to take over. And nowadays it's very sneaky. So hackers will break into your stuff and they will sit there. They will not modify anything. They will not change anything. They will do nothing but just watch the information flow because, in a sense, the digital element is far more valuable than currency. So.
And do you find that you get that quite a lot? Do you find that there's not competitors, but a lot of people that are kind of trying to outdo you in that sense?
Yeah, I get a lot of abuse online. That was one of the reasons why I kind of partnered with the Cyber Smile Foundation. So from my element, people hide behind handles, they hide behind the Twitter elements or Facebook and become some alternate persona. But that affects quite a lot of people with some of the comments that they say. So over the years, I've worked with law enforcement agencies around the world that's helped stop some hackers and malicious individuals. But unfortunately, you're almost seen as like a snitch, So that opened up a whole kind of worms and ball game from black hat hackers around the world that would used to kind of, take pictures of my mum and my father and stuff like that and put them online and just try and provoke me or get some kind of reaction. So to me, it was easier just to stay off social media. I think I'm verified on Instagram and Twitter, but I don't really post anything. I think the one thing I posted was my daughter's birth. That was about it, and that's because I've got friends that follow from around the world. So.
Well, I guess that leads me quite nicely to my next question. So, we're always told to be wary of internet hackers. Can you tell us more about ethical hacking?
Yeah. You need police to protect your physical security. You need hackers to protect your online security. That's just the way that we're moving. Everything is pretty much online. Like 90% of our day, if not more, is essentially online. From the moment we wake up, we're on our phones. From the moment we go to sleep, we are on our phones. That's just the way it is. I think there's a whole kind of anxiety around behavioral aspects of when your phone dies, and how you feel, and you need it charged and stuff like that. There's a lot of research studies going on at the moment. But from kind of my element, it's just kind of keeping you guys safe online, and you need us. We're just as important as the police. We might have non-conventional methods, but we get there eventually in the end. So
I'm absolutely one of those people that freaks out when I've got no battery. Apart from tonight, I'm more than happy for it to be off. Jeremy.
Yeah.
For no reason. Don't do any digging. So, Jeremy, what advice would you give to students considering a career in the tech world?
Well, yeah, we were talking about this earlier. It's like asking what do you want to get into the business world. It's just such a broad question in the sense of if you want to get into technology in some form or another, you need to decide which area you want to get into. It is now pervades every part of our lives, which is why hacking is such an issue, which is why we need ethical hackers to sort it out, because it literally is every part of our existence. We're just getting into possibly the proper reaches of smart home and the IoT products, beyond this sort of very, early stages where the protocols were all sort of disparate and no one could decide on which language to do. Now we've got this new alliance coming through with Apple, Amazon, and Zigbee, and they're going like, okay, well, now we might have a standard language. So literally, it's going to pervade every part of our world. So whether you want to be in the consumer-facing part of technology, whether you want to be in the business side of it, whether you want to be, AI development in quantum computing, which is obviously going to be enormous in the next sort of 15 years or so, whether you want to, the money now is in data manipulation and data science. That's where, if you want to make, there are. I read a stat recently that was saying that for 100% of the job posts out there in data science and data analytics, only 60% of people can apply. So like there is this 40% shortfall, like with people desperate for people in this area and this knowledge. And so that's why those 60% that actually are in this field can charge literally whatever they want. But that's only the situation now, and that's going to change in the next sort of 5-10 years' time as well. So you need to keep a weather eye on what's going to be happening and coming down the pipeline, and go, which area should I be in? A lot of people thought they should be in program and AI generation and things like that, but obviously now we're getting AIs teaching the new AIs. So whether that will be the case, we don't know. So you need to keep an eye on what you actually want to do, whether, Bitcoin, blockchain, as to say, whether you want to be involved in those sorts of areas. They don't need to be concerned with cryptocurrency anymore. There's different blockchains, different parts of industry. So it's really all about what you actually want to do, whether you want to be back end, whether you want to be involved in, even things like the disruption of mundane products, which they call it now, which is why you're getting people trying to sell you really cheap razors and really cheap mattresses and really cheap anything else, and boxes of cosmetics. This is just a way they've worked out of using this of technology to sell you existing cheap product that you wouldn't be that interested in a fun and exciting way to make you interested in it. Some of these products are inferior products, but they're sold in a glamorous new way. And so it's really about what you actually want to do. It's that broad about where you want to go into it. In fact, it's like this embarrassment of choice. The hard part is nailing down what you should get into. Jamie would have a much better idea, I think, of if you want to go into the corporate side, which parts do you think should be going?
Yeah, I think with my specific field as being cybersecurity, the best way to look at it is like a doctor. You have a neurologist, a dermatologist. There are so many versions of the word essentially doctor, or so many fields. In security, you have the hardware guys, the software guys, the people guys, the GUI guys. There's so much variations. And I think about, you've got to pick a specific thing that you want to focus on. And I know you was mentioning earlier about kind of virtual reality. I'm in the same boat as you. It's more kind of augmented that we're going towards. But even stuff like, from my perspective, 10, 15 years ago, you used to break into a building, have a clipboard, jobs are going to write it down. Now we can use Unreal Engine to map out the building from building schematics. So we can get all that stuff that's online, make a virtualized world of how the building layout would be. So I don't even have to be on site to try and break in or plan a way in. I can just use the schematics that are online. So it's all this kind of information is what we've got access to. It's just about looking for it, or trying to find out where it essentially is, but it's there. But from the job roles, it's very difficult. You must pick a specific field and then focus on that specific area and kind of narrow it down.
But the great part about it is that you can literally go into any business you want to go into. I mean, it's like there were only specific industries, like 10, 15 years ago, which you could only go into if you were interested in technology. Now you can go in anything.
Yeah, and I think following on from that as well, 10, 15 years ago, again, I mean, I'm only 26, so I can't really go back past that, but it was all kind of about your grades and, and everyone had to focus and do well at mathematics and English. And now, I mean, one of the Google interviews that I heard about, they just put jelly beans on a table and just had a discussion with you. That's it. They wasn't interested about your grades, and a lot of them operate kind of like a 0-hour policy where you only have to do, I think it's 30 minutes work per week. That's it. And the rest is just whatever you want. If you want to sleep for 9 hours, you can sleep for 9 hours.
Where do I sign up?
Even kind of like Gmail, if we look at Gmail as a prime example, that was created by a Google developer in his free time. During the week, just played about, let's try this, and that's used quite a lot around the world with Office 365 essentially itself. So I think as we go further, the financial institutions, I feel, will be the ones that are further back, and they're very much handshake, suit, very much kind of appearance orientated, and only do business with someone that they essentially know. Whereas a lot of industries now are very kicked back, and I mean, look at this space. This is like an awesome, innovative space that you guys have got here. So I think more and more, down the line, we'll see more and more companies becoming a lot more flexible with kind of working from home. And 10 years ago, they might have been like, well, how do I know what you're doing? Are you actually working? Why should I pay you? What are you up to? Whereas now they're like, okay, well, just work, because you want to do that. You want to feel accustomed and part of it. And even from the uniform type of element, a lot of people and organizations are now adopting like a more flexi look, come on your skateboard, just chill out, but they get the work done because they want to be there. They feel that collective work environment. And for me, when I break into an organization, I always look for the people that say they never do this, they never do that. Not the people that say we, that feel family orientated, that want to be there. Maybe they're a manager or a senior executive. And I think moving forward, we'll get more people like we, than the they type of people. So
there's a darker side to that too, though. A number of technology companies now will offer that sort of, that freedom. You can work whenever you like, come in whenever you like, leave whenever you like. There's free food, free drink, and now they even have vending machines where, replacement keyboards, replacement headphones, replacement mice, replacement whatever, whatever you would normally go home for or something like that. And it is free, and you literally just punch in your employee code, and it dispenses it, and that's when you go, oh, I left my headphones at home. It's, oh, here's a new pair of headphones. And it sounds lovely, but it's all designed to keep you there. It's all designed to keep you working and keep you actually doing it. So
but it's fun.
And if you enjoy it, and it's great, if your work is your life, and that's when you go, oh, this is fantastic. But there is method in what they're doing with that. It's definitely stay here. Make this your life.
Making it appealing place to work.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people, when they feel comfortable, like Google and Microsoft, I use them as examples because they're kind of leaders in the industry, as well as Apple. But you feel a lot more, you want to go there, you want to be there, that's your life, that's your social status. I mean, it's essentially moving like Circle, the program. That's how it's going to be like, I think, in the future.
Love that program.
And, and eventually, I think that's what we'll kind of get to. And even some of the kind of augmented reality glasses that are coming out, and even the stuff that you was on about with Apple potentially working on in the future, I think it'll get a lot more scary, because imagine if I can look at you in a bar and say, okay, hi, Sophie, nice to meet you. Oh, you graduated like X university at what time, and all the information can essentially be there. It'll be very difficult to kind of make up that conversation or kind of want to feel that kind of need to connect, because you already know everything, the information's already there. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, Austin as a prime example, you can find anything online if you do your research. What music you used to listen to, your family members' details. Even if you are the most privacy-orientated person ever, you will always leave a breadcrumb or a trail online that you could trace by. It's just about having that time to kind of do it. But I hope I haven't scared anybody.
So we're going to go out to the audience, just because, based off the last talk, I know that our students have some amazing questions, so...
No pressure.
No pressure at all. So do we have anybody that has... Yeah? Okay, so we're going to go... No, it's absolutely fine.
We can neither confirm nor deny.
This is not my favourite part. There you go. Do you want to just introduce yourself and then...
Hi, my name's Olivia. I'm a journalism student at Edinburgh Napier, and it's a question to the pair of you, actually. As people who are in the technology industry, how would you think that in the age of, data is everything, how could someone protect their data as best as possible?
Do you want to go first?
No, you go first on this one.
I think the difficulty that we're kind of seeing is there's a lot of people that are analog clocks in a digital age. And, like your mums and dads and grandfathers and stuff like that. I mean, my grandfather himself wants to speak to a bank teller. He wants to go to the bank. He wants to have that conversation. He has his little book where he writes down exactly what he draws out, and that's how he's felt comfortable all his life. So I think it's quite difficult. Even the education sector, schools were created for mills, when they haven't really evolved in the UK from being in that environment, sitting in rows, being taught. But if you look at like Finland and Denmark, their kind of education system is is a lot more evolved and a lot more kind of laid back, and you learn a lot more and absorb a lot more. So I think from kind of your question to keep yourself safe and secure, it's about knowing what is it that you want to secure. You know, that's quite a broad range to kind of specify. You might need your financial details securing, you might need your pictures on your phone securing. So it's about understanding what that is. And there's always kind of an app out there, whether you need antivirus for your machine, it's really important. You know, I've known devices be online for 5-10 minutes and caught malware just from literally being connected to the internet. But a lot more people are very sneaky. So just be cautious with the applications that you're using. You know, a lot of them want your data. That is the most important and valuable aspect of why you've downloaded that app. So just be cautious. You know, just be careful when you're browsing. Always use a VPN. Always. I can't stress the importance. You know, I use NordVPN. There's loads of providers out there that are really good. And just make sure you're connected. Even when you're on Eduroam, you know, there's so much juicy information that you can find by connecting to Eduroam. Not that I've done that before. I'm just saying, like, just be cautious and educate people. You know, instead of having the kind of assumption that, oh, I'll just put my card in and just tap my pin in like this. You know, I don't really care. No one's going to steal my money. There'll always be somebody watching, whether you're online or offline. There's always someone that has that agenda that wants to extract that information. If I can watch you for a day or 2 days and steal £2,000, they would happily do that. You know, if they break into a corporate environment and sit there for 6 months to 12 months because they're going to make 500,000, they will happily sit there day in and day and night. So just make sure what's important to you and just take the steps, you know, more appropriate. So with the antivirus, put pins on your phone. Don't use birthdays, you know. That guy just smiled and looked to the right. That's a memory. You know you do that, boy. And don't use the same password for everything. And if you have a policy that says, you know, when you eventually do go into a corporate environment, you'll get password policies and stuff like that you have to reset your password every 30 days. Don't just put a 1 on the end of it and then the next month take that off and then the month next do a 1 on the end of it. Just change it and spice it up. I mean, the best passwords are most like sentences, something that appeals to you. So I went to the shops today, you know, because that's very least likely to have been cracked than like Blue 27 or something like that.
Unless you're like watching the person in the shops. Like,
yeah, or like
they got
one of your
my,
passwords is Jessica 1964 exclamation mark. Just don't use that. I'm not looking at the person that's using that. And it's not. Gotta have a rummage around, right? Anyway, I'll pass it over to to my legal guardian.
You're absolutely. Heed everything he says. He's absolutely right. But I think the key distinction is that you ask, say, how can you make yourself safe and secure? You can't. You can't. It is, how can I make myself safer? How can I make it more secure? There are degrees, it's gradations of that, and that is all you can hope for. You want to make it as hard as possible, or as you make yourself as least interesting as possible if someone could get that information from you. You have to remember that when Apple brought out their facial recognition system, I think it was hacked within a day, less than a day. And so it's not that situation where these things are secure. They're not. It's like, okay, how hard can we make it? And no system is secure at all. It's just basically how easy you make it. And you have to remember that. And so likewise with passwords, if they're easy, if they're formulaic, you'll get it. Get yourself a password manager, you know, like LastPass or something like that. If you're never going to remember them all anyway, get yourself a password manager. But you know, it's that. Just don't fool yourself thinking that it's this. If you want to enter this world, if you want to enter the digital world, that this is the price you pay. The only way to get out of it is to not be part of that digital world at all.
I think kind of following on from that, as I said earlier, a lot of cyber attacks, you know, almost 90% are crimes of opportunity. You know, I've randomly stumbled upon something, let's exploit it, let's have fun. And you're quite right, you know, 15 minutes is normally the time. If I can't break it in 15 minutes, I can't be bothered. I'll move on to my next target. And that's the mindset of these script kiddies and other individuals that are trying to break into your stuff. I mean, from a phone perspective, I think kind of Android security is brilliant if you know how to use it. If you know what you're doing on that operating system, because it's very free-for-all, download what you want, you know, turn on unknown sources. Whereas Apple is very user-friendly, but also equally secure. Everything has to be approved through the App Store. It's very difficult to download the apps onto your device that aren't from a known source. So I think from that element, it's just having that 15-minute window. If I can't break in, I'll move on. And just put like an 8-digit passcode on your phone. Use your student numbers. Or no, don't. That's I was just seeing your reaction then. But use something that's kind of randomised and not your banking PIN, not your student number. Nothing associated with your family. Just pick something at random, and don't use the pattern locks. Okay, please do not use the pattern locks. They are so easy to guess. So, especially when you smudge your grease all the way down the phone, you can kind of work it out. But yeah, I think. Sorry, any other questions?
I think those looks on students' faces were those that were like...
I can't really see anything. I'm like blind right now.
It is my student number, and then you were like jokes. They were like, damn it. Okay, next question.
Hi guys. First of all, good talk, and thank you for making us aware of the things that which are pretty trivial. So yeah, thank you. So I have like so many questions, but I'm just gonna ask 2 questions to both of you. First is for Jamie. I have like so I just want to know. So I'm from a finance background. So I just want to know, what do you think about the decentralized currency like Bitcoin and everything? Is it only a store value thing, or is it gonna be big, like where you can do transactions, or it's gonna be big in the future? And second thing is, what are your top 3 sci-fi movies like you love?
Well, from the cryptocurrency side, it's not really my area of expertise, but I'll give it my best shot. I think when we first started with Bitcoin, that was like a hacker's paradise. It was a way to transfer money around the world and then wait like 24 hours to just see it reach the destination. But that was the birth to everything. That was essentially the very first, kind of unique adaptation. And I think that there had been papers previously 10, 15, 20 years ago with some of the kind of assertions of what it has. But the fact that it's so anonymous and scary from a sense of we don't know who created it. A lot of people are saying Satoshi, but it could be a government, it could be anybody that's essentially made that, and there could be an ulterior motive to it. But nowadays, from a hacking perspective, hackers use monocoin because you can duplicate transactions. It's very hard to track the origination and destination. But I think moving forward, everything is going to be based around cryptocurrency. Whether not cryptocurrency itself, but blockchain. I mean, Australia, I think you probably know a bit more about that, but they're using it to pay their employees like social security and stuff like that. So there's a lot of adaptations to kind of real world scenarios. Even Ethereum, the blockchain itself was used to pay refugees. So it was a way for they could go to an ATM without any passport or anything and essentially get any currency that the government would give the refugees. But moving forward, I think over the next 5-10 years, it'll be very much blockchain orientated. So I hope that kind of answers you. I'm not really a blockchain specialist. So.
Culturally, you need people to get used to the idea of this as well. I mean, if you think about money, the concept is normal because you're normalized to it, but actually these bits of paper mean nothing and they have no value whatsoever. They're just a token of donation of what this actually means. A long time ago, you could actually take your notes into the Bank of England and exchange them for gold. A very long time ago, but that quickly stopped. You couldn't do that. So this is all about it means nothing, but to you it's normal. To us it's normal. It's a different way of doing it. And one of the interesting things about digital currencies is that it almost highlights how odd the concept is, how abstract the concept is, and but we don't apply it to money because that doesn't feel odd because we know it and understand it. It's a generational thing maybe, and our generation might have the hardest time dealing with cryptocurrencies and digital currencies, but they will become widely adopted, absolutely.
And I think Total Recall, Independence Day, if you can class that as sci-fi, and Catch Me If You Can, that's like my little inspiration. Just don't do check fraud, it's bad for you.
I have 2 questions for you also. I just want to know, I just want to know your top 5 industries for the next 5 years. Like, what do you think is going to be like exploding in the next 5 to 10 years? Top 5.
Yeah, that's a very easy question to ask.
Okay.
A very hard question to answer. Augmented reality. Quantum computing, blockchain technology in fields outside of cryptocurrency. I think if you're looking at AI in relation to medical research,
Okay.
Is that 4 or 5? I can't remember.
4.
Okay.
That was 5.
I thought it was 5.
Sorry.
You know, but that's just off the top of my head. I mean, like, you know, but you know, all of those fields are going to be absolutely huge.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, sorry. Bit like starstruck now. So I'm just kidding. No, so what do you think about, do you know the Microsoft Bot? And the like most racist bot that was ever released by accident, had no intentions. Do you not think that that's going to kind of impact AI moving forward? Because us as a society, if I meet you in person, you're not going to like say bad things about me. That's our kind of culture. But behind the back, people do essentially say it. And the scary thing is on the internet, you can say absolutely anything you want with pretty much no repercussion. You know, it's very hard to kind of police it. But what do you think from like an AI perspective? I know that's not really like your field, but what do you think personally from an AI perspective, moving forward, do you think it would be very scary that they learn from us and our traits and some of the stuff that we essentially do?
Okay, well, that's a very good example. What Jamie's talking about is a bot that was built up by Microsoft years ago now that was meant to be your friend in your pocket. It was meant to be like a chatbot that have a level of AI, and it within weeks it went racist and started randomly
48
insulting.
hours.
48 hours.
Yeah.
And Microsoft had to turn it off, and they didn't because they didn't know why it was doing it. I mean, this is the thing: you can't just open up an AI brain and see why it's doing it. You don't know. So, it's interesting you should ask that, because actually this is the frontier right now of chatbots for companies worldwide. They're trying to work out how can we have discussions with our customers using AI where it doesn't start insulting them, where it doesn't start being randomly racist, where it actually knows and then comprehends what they're saying and doesn't piss off the consumer. And so many people are starting to do it now, but like Facebook working with the Georgia Institute of Technology, applying AI to chatbots to see if they could actually have human-like conversations and not insult people and be nasty. And what they found was that when they gave these bots, which they gave the data of 6,000 human conversations, they gave them 2 parameters. The first parameter was they wanted them to have the most natural human conversation possible, a lot of back and forth, and the idea was to actually divvy up a set of virtual resources of different monetary values and to win and to work out which of these bots negotiated the best. When in the first parameter, when it was the human, like the human interaction, just have a nice conversation, they found that the bots never really got anywhere. They were overly willing to compromise. The conversation made sense, but it didn't really finish. When they turned on the second parameter, which was to maximize reward, to win this negotiation, a very interesting thing happened with this model. And the model ended up feigning interest in certain issues, in valueless issues, so that it could later then compromise by conceding them. So in order to win the game. So what that means is a very fancy way of saying that the bots learn to lie in order to negotiate better, just naturally trying to. And it's like lying is a very complex form of social behavior. It takes about 2 or 3 years of human development to start learning to lie. And these bots learned it very quickly, in a matter of hours, and basically just without any human interaction whatsoever, simply by trying to achieve their goals. And so people think that's scary, but also the bots started speaking in their own language.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There wasn't the one where there was kind of 2 AI in a room, and after like a few hours or a few days or whatever, they started communicating in their own language that wasn't known to us. But they had to shut it down essentially because they didn't understand it. Yeah.
But these weren't scary factors, because in this model they were not told that they had to continue to speak in English, and they weren't told that they had to tell the truth all the time. So it was imperfect instruction. And so there's nothing evil going on here. It's like talking about whether fire is evil or not. It's just a tool to be used. And that sort of thing is now being used in all sorts of companies about how to deal with customers. So they try using those sorts of things to identify whether on a chatbot forum, whether you're going mental at British Gas and getting really upset, and then...
Well, if you swear on the phone, you can always pretty much get through to a teller or kind of an advisor. I worked that out the hard way, but it's insane, really. What about the whole concept of how do you justify life in AI terms. So there's that whole piece that was published about 2 years ago now, and it was a concept of you driving in your car driving a bus with like 30 people, and if you swerve right, you kill one person, but you essentially save everybody else. But if you swerve left, you kill everybody on the bus, but you save that one person. How do you kind of justify which lives, better to take in a sense, without kind of causing, too much? But that was a whole kind of conversational ball game that I think would be very difficult for us to solve moving forward. But even from a neural network perspective, now I've been doing a lot of research over the last few months on neural networks. I started off on the Snake game. You should research it. It's a really cool Python game. Just Google neural network Snake. But even that, in a sense of after speeding it up and giving it more input, after 24 hours, it was like the snake master. It understood the fruit. It understood that it needed to kill itself off to kind of evolve. And moving them towards like a marketing element, that'd be absolutely perfect in an industry to target them specific customers that are more willing to buy. But then it goes back to the concept of what is privacy and what is our privacy and what is it kind of defined as. And I think that's the scary part to the terms and conditions that we all click I agree. And one really simple factor I just want to mention from that part was the Strava heat maps. So we all wear Fitbits. Well, I don't. I need one, but I don't wear one. And that would record all our activities, our favorite routes, our walking routes and stuff. And because you clicked I accept, your data got uploaded to the Strava heat maps. And all of a sudden, all these military bases that were supposed to have closed down 8 years ago, like a CIA site in Somalia as a prime example, every night the ladies and gentlemen would jog around the perimeter. So all of a sudden they started lighting up, but these were supposed to be closed 8 years ago, which led to a massive intelligence outcry, both foreign and domestic intelligence. So even something so tiny, so simple, can lead to a massive breach, especially for companies or organizations. But again, I'm quite privacy. I mean, from my perspective, I know what you can hack. I know what you can see. Like, if you targeted you and spent time, we can probably get in your webcam, listen to your microphone, yada, yada. But it's like someone has to physically target you to be able to do that. It's not really random, that element. So it's like all my stuff is online. I don't really care. I mean, if you go to an Alexa after this and say, who is Jamie Woodruff? She'll say, a British hacker. She's got my date of birth, my daughter's name, my partner's name that I'm due to get married this year. All this information that people have wrote about from speeches and stuff around the world, I haven't give her consent to put that in, Amazon consent to put that into Alexa, but I have no choice, and that's just the way it kind of moves forward. I do have a choice, but it's too much of a pain in the ass to do anything about it. So, and it's like that on purpose.
But that brings us nicely back round to what sort of areas of technology you want to get into, because, what we're talking about here is ethics in AI, and this is a field. There's lots of questions. There are very few answers. We've built something, or something is building itself now, where we are managed to, the mechanics of it and the digitalization of it, we've managed to almost crack. But the ethical side of it, what are we actually creating? This is the area that we've forged ahead with without properly considering. And so now all the conversations, really, the high-level conversations about ethics in AI, what should we do there? There's a whole, you could do a whole talk just on ethics and AI. So, and this is the point. People who are dealing with ethics, philosophy, humanity, there's a major role for you in the technology coming. Major role. Big money as well, I would imagine as well, where all of these things have to be puzzled out and worked out, and what should we actually do? And it's something that you can't really leave to the tech heads, because I'm a geek as well, and it's not in our purview. It's never anything we have ever had to really consider before. This idea of the nature of something and ethics and society and humanity, and do we want to impart that to this AI, or is it something different? Is it different entirely altogether? At what point does it become a separate life form in this way? If you're talking about sci-fi films, all of these things we are going to rush headlong into from a technological point of view, way before ethically and philosophically we'll be able to deal with it.
There was one that kind of that Wired wrote about last year, and I thought this is a really funny way to kind of summarize that. So there was this guy in America, and he bought the registration plate null. So he purchased the NULL reg plate, just like we have reg plates here. But every time the value was incorrect, so let's say someone's had a speeding ticket, it was hard to see it and blur it, we always default to the null value in any kind of programming language. We always go back to null, NULL, or 0. So all of a sudden, this guy that owned this null plate, all these speeding tickets, parking tickets, everything that couldn't be categorized went onto his reg plate because he was the default value of null for their database. And he accumulated about $25,000 per month of fines that weren't even his, just because it went into kind of the false category. There was one where someone covered up the license plate with kind of an SQL dump code. So there's a way that we can drop all tables from a database, right? It's a very bad command to use, but when you're hacking, you can dump everything out with this specific syntax, right, or syntax. So someone put that over their plate, went through a speed camera, and that flashed and dropped all the speeding fines from that speed camera database because it told it to drop all tables and emptied it all out. And the guy got away from a ticket from that, so you can go on BBC and have a look at that. So they patched it eventually, but again, it's like a cat and mouse game. And I think moving forward, it's only going to get far worse before it gets a lot better. Stuff like the Cambridge Analytica stuff, it's amazing the amount of information that is there and online that we can model, predict, and utilize about yourselves. A lot of kind of shops like Marks and Spencer's as a prime example, Tesco, Asda, are using facial recognition to look at some of the products that you're purchasing. So like, what should we target specific ads when they walk past billboards that are more relevant to that person? So it's becoming very almost like our shadow of ourselves online is not becoming ours anymore. It's kind of like fading away and we're losing it online, but it's going to get worse before it gets better, I'm sorry to say. Stay in education. It's the way forward.
So we've got a couple more questions. Do you want to? Yeah.
Hello. I just have one question. What are your thoughts about the iCloud data breach in the year 2014?
So the iCloud data breach
Yeah.
and the UAE 2014?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with UAE 2014. Just explain that.
No. There is
Are you on about the Bangladeshi and the Swift Bank breach? Or?
All the celebrities. That.
Oh, you mean
that one.
you mean the fappening? You can edit
Yeah, the
that out,
fappening,
but
exactly.
You should have just said that, right? That's in geek terms, man. That was even in Wired, so don't Google that, please. Don't Google that. But yeah, I was on Good Morning Britain talking about Selena Gomez about that incident at the time, and it's true, because I think the exploit from that was an old legacy piece of technology that they forgot to turn off, so they was able to abuse the API to just issue as many passwords as possible to recover them accounts. But, I mean, the scary factor is we synchronize everything to the cloud. We take everything off our device. It's very easy. We want it in one kind of centralized place, and then we can use that on our devices and technology. We don't have a multi-cloud approach to that, that technical aspect. And the scary thing is passwords. Using some easy passwords that people can compromise that led to the nude pictures of the celebrities getting leaked online. And that kind of changed the way that the security was for iCloud and Apple in general. And they added a lot more API kind of contingencies. It was very, you can only request a certain amount, even if you're in academia. I used to abuse APIs all the time when I was a university student, because as soon as you write, I need it for research purposes, they just open the gates and let you take as much information as you want. But they started to be very cautious with their requests. So
whose fault was it? Was Apple that vulnerable at that point?
No, it's the celebrity's fault. No, it was Apple's fault at that time. It was the fact that their legacy technology that they put online, they didn't mean to have it in the in the environment. It was supposed to be in the development, not production. They left it online. Someone found out that you could abuse as many recalls as possible to password reset. Even if you had two-factor authentication, it was irrelevant because you were doing an API call. It bypassed that, and so it was Apple's fault. But they owned up to it. They said sorry. And a lot of companies don't. There's so many financial institutions that I've seen over the years, especially one a few months ago, that just brush it under the carpet, and think, well, hang on a minute, it's not going to it's going to affect us massively if we go public. So let's just say we fixed it and send a few letters out to our customers. That shouldn't be the case, How can people learn from their mistakes if they don't open up and tell people about it? And I think the one thing with security is a company, it's almost like you're vulnerable, you're weak when you be breached. That's the way that they see it. And I'm a member of NIST, which is is like the National Information Security Sharing Partnership based in London. They've got GCHQ, and all different agencies involved in that. It's like invite only. And they tell you about breaches days before it becomes public knowledge, which allows you to fix it, allows you to patch it and move on from it. So I think having something like that definitely is great for security researchers. But you guys like Joe Blogs that aren't in security at all, it's very difficult to see that. You've just got to wait for the media or the news. Unfortunately, Wired and Vice and them type of outlets say it as is and tell you as is, whereas a lot of the media are all like negative this, negative that, bad this, bad that. So, the Sun once wrote, this is a funny story, listen to this, right? So they sent a photographer out, or a paparazzi person, to take a picture of me at university. They photoshopped me into a wheelchair and put "the really good hacker from Lancashire" as the headline. Yeah, seriously. And wrote an article about me and literally photoshopped me into a wheelchair. So when the newspaper shortage, the toilet paper shortage, we know full well, just get the Sun. So...
It's interesting, just because like companies like Apple and you think they're or banks, so you think they're. It's a common misconception that they're large companies, then they're actually looking after their own security, or they're being very diligent about what they're actually doing. But things get missed and things get overlooked. The British Airways credit card hack back in, was it August 2018? Yeah. 2018, that was like, what was it, 350,000 credit card details from customers. That got in through the baggage handling section of the website. Baggage handling. And it was 14 lines of code inserted to get those details. That was all, 14 lines of code. And it cost them hundreds of thousands and millions in a PR disaster. The 7 lines of code, it was 7 lines of code. And the 14 is actually, the 14 was, I'm getting confused, is because it turned out that most of the site was kept up to date, but the baggage handling part of the website hadn't been updated in 14 years. And that's British Airways. 14 years. And so you talk about Apple not doing it with their iCloud. It's sort of like, these things just, they're just as fallible. These large companies, they're just as fallible as you are with your crappy passwords. They really are terrible sometimes.
I think there's, just following on from that actually, there's a guy called Chris X, we'll call him. You can Google him yourself. But he showed how easy it was to hack into a plane while sat in the seat of a plane. Now, he was a security researcher, but very ego-eccentric, so would post everything online, say it as is, and he was taking pictures and video live of him hacking into the plane. He could see the onboard brain of or the computer itself. He could see the climb, descend, flaps, everything at all about this aircraft, just via Android ADB, plugging straight into the seat to charge his phone through the USB. Now, he got banned from all commercial aircrafts in the US, which quite rightly he should, and the FBI was waiting for him on the ground because he was live tweeting while I was in the air hacking this plane. He didn't cause any damage or do anything, but it just goes to show because of their technology, it was like, very outdated. And you see that a lot in financial institutions. I mean, so some of them are like teletext, but it still works, so why not? That's their morale. Until it goes wrong. But with the British Airways, that's just insanity. So.
Yeah, the apathy is enormous.
So just one last question. What's the difference between white hat, grey hat, and black hat hackers?
Well, one goes jail, one can sleep all right at night. No, from a white hat perspective, I have a kind of a code of conduct, so all my certifications are with MAL 2. The reason why I chose them, you've got EC Council and different kind of bodies, governing bodies around the world. MAL 2 are accredited by the National Security Agency and preferred by the FBI, and I do a lot of stuff in UAE and in America as well, and they prefer that, so that's why I went with MAL 2. But I mean, the difference between it is my code of conduct, I have to follow a set rules and guidelines. I can't just walk into a building without written consent, verbal consent, everything has to be contracted. And if I slip up, I'm liable. There's been penetration testers that are white hat, that are there for the right reasons, but have accidentally gone out of scope and got arrested and jailed for it. So it's quite a grey area in a sense of that side. Grey hack is more like, let's say I want to rummage around and look at some celeb pictures or out like that. I'll keep them to myself. It's not really for financial gain, but hang on a minute. I can see pictures of me as well, so I'll report it to Apple, and I want that fixed because I don't want them seeing me. That's more like the grey area. And then the black hat are the guys that want to steal as much as they can, resell it, want to create some form of currency from that, and don't hold on to it at all. It's almost like a quick flip. You steal that data, you sell it on. You do your next breach, you steal that, you sell it on. And the black hat guys tend to work more like organized crime, so they work with criminals around the world, and they create the technologies that allows them to skim ATM cards and stuff like that. So I think that kind of maybe explains it better for you.
Which category do you fall into?
Oh, I'm like a purple hat.
Fair enough.
No, I'm a white hat. So I made the choice a long time ago. It was just the fact that you'd wake up and you'd be paranoid. You'd be scared. You'd be looking over your shoulder. You'd wait for a knock on the door. You'd wait for the police to raid you at 5 a.m. It wasn't the life that I kind of wanted. And I was just saying this earlier. So there's an electronic cigarette company, I won't say which one, and there's a job site where people post like hacking jobs. Have you ever seen The Mechanic on TV? It's kind of similar to that. There's literally a job board, forums, a really outdated forums where people post like wanted database developer, 10k annum for Wired. So they would pay you 10 grand to steal that database and then trade it to them, and they pay you in cryptocurrency. So there was this bounty for 10 grand, illegal bounty to steal their database of all their customers to kind of resell it. So I stole the database. It literally took me no more than 10 minutes, tops, to steal this database of about 2.5 million electronic cigarette customers around the world. And I'm sat there and I'm like, well, it's 10 grand, but then I thought, hang on a minute, what have I just done? And it literally just like that. And I rang him up and I spoke to a guy called Stuart, the managing director, and I said, I'm really sorry, but I've hacked your website. Can you kind of forgive me? And this is the way I got in. This is how you can fix it. And this is the data that I was able to take. I'm sorry. And they hung up. Then Stuart rang me back 2 days later and said, here's £3,000 a month. We want to pay for you to go to university while I'm at university and continue going. We don't want you to work for us at the end or anything, but we really appreciate the fact that you have told us about this. It's not damaged our company, because they were having a massive growth spurt at the time and it would have definitely damaged their reputation. And that made me realize that, hang on a minute, my actions do actually have consequences, and that could have shut that business down that's been there for a purpose, tried the best to break into the market. And that I realized, and that's the day that I give all my exploits back to companies around the world, like Facebook, Google, Twitter. I literally wrote to them and said, this is all my exploits that I've been abusing for the last 2 years. I'm really sorry, but I don't need them anymore. I'm going white hat. And that was what I did. And then all of a sudden I was published in like Wired, published loads of articles about me, BBC did, and just started to rise my name up. And I never expected that at all. I was happy in my little bubble. And then all of a sudden, I'm like still on the stage talking to loads of people. My first ever speech was with Boris Johnson and David Cameron on stage talking about UK tech security policy. And I had no idea what that even meant. So I just memorized all the articles that were mentioned in Parliament and started quizzing them with questions that I had no idea what they actually meant at the time. And that was it, really. So you got any input on that?
Regarding black hats, is there, this could be a stupid question, is there a geographical spread, or like locations where there's more of them, or is it just completely, we don't know where they are?
So if you kind of look at a map, right, we've got a world map, yeah? So at the top left, we've got like Canada and the US and stuff like that. Well, these guys come from the top right, majority of the times, and kind of Eastern European countries. I mean, if you go on Google now and type in Hackerville or Cyberville, there's a country in Romania, like a little city, that's got loads of old data centers, and hackers, majority of the financial crime goes through Cyberville or Hackerville, whatever it's called, I can't remember. But and it shows you videos of them walking around town and all these like layer 1 connections and tier 1 connections, and you're like, there's rubble falling down off buildings, but they've got more of an infrastructure than anywhere around the world. But it's very difficult to shut places like that down because it's quite corrupt in certain countries. But definitely from the top right, there's some really good hackers. And then from kind of the Asian side, there's a lot from Asia. Not so much a lot in UK or Europe, not that quite a lot of following. It's more that side. So I can't really go into details. I can point where, but I can't say. It's like up here. Is there any further questions before I get a call?
I think.
Do you have one more question?
Sorry. Hi, sorry, me again. So you were mentioning before that it's going to get worse before it gets better in terms of privacy online and the digital identity. It's a question for both of you. do you reckon that technology companies as a whole should be more regulated on a legal standpoint? Because right now a lot of politicians don't technically understand a lot of what's coming through. It was especially with things like Article 13, that just wasn't. It was just largely ununderstood by a large portion of either the government or the population of the UK as a whole. So I was wondering what you guys had to say on if it should be regulated or not.
I think it's kind of too late. If I'm saying it from like an opinionated perspective, I think it's far too late for that. That should have been done a long time ago. Now we've got Google, Apple, Microsoft, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. That's pretty much it, and Alibaba if we go into that. But and it's so difficult because the government takes so much data from these companies and organisations to use for different strategies or modelling or predictions or even the analytical side. So how can we kind of regulate when they take, if that makes sense? But I think over the next, I'd say 25 to 30 years, if not more, it will become like a very custom regulated kind of industry. But right now it's almost like a free for all. You can do what you want.
It's a Wild West, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a Wild West, yeah, literally. If you look at like 200 years ago, we've advanced more as a civilization now than what we've done kind of previously, obviously. But I mean, moving forward, it's going to become more tight and regulated. When it's out with the old, the people that have dealt with pen and paper and kind of the analog clocks, where we get more people like ourselves becoming into Parliament and growing up with the technology, because then we'll know how to apply it. I mean, I've got an electric scooter, like an e-scooter, and I can't drive it on the road or on the pavement because of an 1800 law. And we're supposed to be more kind of e-green and stuff, but this 1800s law states that I can. It also states that wheelchairs can't be used on the path, because it classes as a mode of transport. So again, even the cybersecurity policies and the stuff that I have to follow, like the misuse of Computer Act and the kind of the data protection stuff, we're becoming more prominent. But that was based on a lot of it wasn't bring your own devices to work back then. Everything was there when you entered the building. And in my line of work, it's up to the judge. If he's angry, because he's not had his coffee, he can give me any sentence that he wants. There's no justification. It's literally down to that judge at that time. And there's lots of hackers that have done hardly anything, going to jail for like more than manslaughter. And it's like, it's ridiculous, really. Hopefully you guys will change it when you graduate. When I can retire in peace.
When you look at this, there's so many examples of how regulation and legislation just cannot keep up with, and for example, okay, look at drones and look at what had the FAA, after years and years of missing their deadlines, a deadline after deadline of coming up with legislation, regulation of who could own a drone and who could fly it and where they could fly it. And this was before the Gatwick stuff and the Heathrow stuff. This is way before. And they just couldn't work out what to do, and they kept missing these deadlines. And eventually they came up with this idea of, okay, a drone over a certain size needs to be registered with the owner, but only if they're over 16. And that was the legislation. And you go, okay, well, Jesus, that's terrible. That's never going to work. And they say, well, that's all we can think of to do for now. Likewise with autonomous vehicles, the technology has been, available and ready for a number of years now. And it's, LiDAR's been expensive, but it's actually come down in price significantly in the last couple of years. But the technology has been working, and it was actually there. And, the reason why we haven't had autonomous vehicles is simply because the legislative and regulatory framework is not there. If someone has an accident, if the car has an accident, who's responsible? What's the insurance for liability? All of this is there, and we and we've known about this in the UK. We've known about this. We pride ourselves as one of the countries that's developing one of the best intellectual property bases in autonomous vehicles, and we still have got no legislation really on what we're actually doing on this. And then you think about, and now we're creating AI. And the ethical question we talked about earlier, that's way beyond drones and whether a car can drive itself or not. And so this idea that, that society and governments are going to be keeping pace with this is farcical. And then obviously asking whether the public at large even knows it. And we did lots of Article 13 coverage on Wired. It was brilliant for us. We got loads of web traffic for it. It really saved our bacon in terms of our yearly targets for the website. But you go out there and ask anybody about it, no one knows what the hell it is. And so, it's lack of engagement and a lack of understanding, not only from the public at large, but also mainly from the ruling powers, the governments and legislators. And I can't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I think Dubai have just done one recently with Red Bull where they built like a jetpack. So there's this guy just flying around on this little jetpack going up a mile up in the air and then just parachutes back down. To do that in the UK, you probably have to wait 10 years for it to pass through health and safety to allow you to do it. And that's the worrying factor is we're not really kind of moving forward with technology. Everything's getting stumbled. I mean, like an e-scooter, it should be saving money, it should, it's helping the environment, it should be easily passed through. But they've been debating this for nearly 2.5, nearly 3 years now, and we're still no nearer than what we was 3 years ago. And that falls under the factor of the people in Parliament, majority of them are 60, 65, 70 years old, and the kind of horse and carriage type people, no offence, and redact that, but, and that's the way it is, and it's scary. But I know when my daughter's growing up, it's going to be a lot different, for her, and it's going to be a lot more fun for technology, and I hope it's a lot more sandbox where she can just do what she wants and has fun and kind of understands it a lot more. But yeah, I think the regulationary side, it sucks, doesn't it, for the UK? Even in Amsterdam, where they kind of trialled the Tesla vehicles and the I can't say the word.
Autonomous.
That's the one, yeah. And in Denmark, you've got people, driving around all the time just on autonomous mode, just sitting back and just enjoying things. But again, over here, we've got to wait 5-10 years. So.
I think Wild West is a very good metaphor as well, really. Because basically, and this brings us back to where you want to go into this world if you do want to go into it, and what sort of careers you want and where you're going. Because it's literally there for the taking. It really is imagine it like Wild West, there's really anything you can go into if you like. Even if you look at e-commerce, if you had a graph of e-commerce versus internet penetration and mobile phone penetration, you've reached virtual saturation with internet penetration and with smartphone penetration. The graph would go up like that and up like that for both of them. But e-commerce is down here. And so you go, and it's just about to do that. It's just about to go massively up. So if you think we're in this world of e-commerce, for example, and that you can buy your groceries online, you can buy in your glasses or clothes or whatever you want to online. If you think you're in this world of e-commerce now, we haven't seen anything yet, nothing at all yet, and it's all coming. And it is like the gold rush.
Yeah.
It's right Wild West. And as a result of that, you're seeing people flocking to these digital towns, these digital spaces, and going I'm going to make my fortune. It is not too late. All of this is about to happen. Has anyone got any questions? Sorry.
So we've just got one more. Or is it one or two?
I'm sure that was 4 times ago.
Okay. So we've got 2 more questions.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then if anybody does have any questions, the guys will be around afterwards as well, so you can just grab them one-on-one. This happens all the time. We've got such amazing questions. The students are getting so much information. So, okay, so who wants to go first? You go.
Hi. I've been reading a lot about how surveillance, government surveillance, has been rising all over the world, especially if you look at India, China, US, wherever. And it kind of paints a very scary picture of the future for our generation. What's your take on that? Government surveillance, I guess.
Scary future for what? Sorry.
In terms of how
your generation.
Yeah, our generation, the right to speak freely online, or I don't know, even protest or other stuff like that.
It's very strange because you've got more freedom than you've ever had, and also the ability to be tracked more than you've ever had as well. So it's the flip side to that coin. We're going through an industrial revolution right now, a digital revolution. And, if you look what happened the last time that happened, then, it changed radically. Lots of people go on about in the previous industrial revolution, the only job that was actually lost, that disappeared, was lift operator, elevator operator. But that didn't really matter. That's a false fact, really, because it changed the structure of society so radically that it took years, decades, for anything to be sorted out. And we're sort of going through that again. It's like it is changing fundamentally how we live our lives. So, should you be worried? There are so many reasons to be worried. And should we have done these things that we've done? Well, it's too late. We've done them now. You can't unmake fire. It's there. It's a tool. We just have to use it. You've got a young daughter, and we grew up in the age where where we remember that where there wasn't an internet, or I do, you guys might not, where there wasn't internet and where we didn't have these resources at our fingertips, and whether your perspective is whether we've gained more than we've lost. I happen to think we have gained more than we've lost. I'm wired is generally optimistic about the future, and I like that fact that I work there, and this is how we feel about it. I'm jealous of the generation that are growing up now that won't know what it was like before that, and they'll only grow up in this era, because it's our generation, and it's certainly my generation, that's going to have a hard time living in this brave new world where we're completely changing our ways how we live and how we work and what careers we go into and what part do we want in society, or whether we want to go off-grid altogether. But it's going to be really bloody interesting, and I wish I was younger.
I can't comment on that. No, genuinely, I'm sorry. I can't comment on that specific question.
Okay, last question then.
See me afterwards. I can.
Okay, so my question is there anything that's unhackable? Like you said, you go on, or you can just go somewhere, just try your luck for 15 minutes. Even trying counts. Let it be
everything's
ethical.
hackable, it just takes time. If you have enough time and enough resources, you can get past absolutely anything.
Absolutely.
But it's about making sure again that it takes a lot longer to actually do that. But everything from even pacemakers, there's way you can cause people to have heart attacks now via the wireless in pacemakers. Even insulin pumps, there's ways that you can hack them to issue more insulin. You can see through your webcam, through your microphone, IoT technology now. It's great that they're making some form of kind of regulatory or compliance body. But that was the Wild West again for the last 2 years. And people would go online and they'd buy technology from kind of China because it was cheaper. And it wouldn't be regulated. The same password would apply to pretty much all devices, and then that would lead to a massive botnet, So I think from that element, it's quite difficult to kind of say as well. So
I think at this point, obviously, I feel like the questions could go on all night, but just a massive thank you to our guests. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. Thank you for all your questions. We do these events to inspire students, connect you with people who are really at the top of their industry. So I've found it fascinating. Hopefully you have too. And thank you.
Thanks very much. That was awesome, man.